And I have spoken to Dr. Jehle. I'm going to skip the introduction so that we can bring him on, and he has promised he's going to speak fast and try to help us recover a couple of the minutes that we've lost to other parts of the program. So, the Interposition Oration by Dr. Paul Jehle.
Amazingly, the framers understood that if we ever got to the position where we had corrupt government that was not following the Constitution, there was a remedy built into the system. Interestingly enough, when Robert Robertson penned the words to the classic hymn, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," he chose an interesting word to express Christian theology in the atonement. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his precious blood. The word interposition means to place something in between two opposing parties. In theology, it was the blood of Christ coming between the judgment of God on sin and the guilty sinner. What does this have to do with constitutional law? Everything. For the historic development of a remedy on how to deal with tyrants, the usurpation of the limits of political power were brought forth from the womb of Christian theology, beginning with the early church and the first century theologians. From Augustine to Luther, Calvin, Knox, the biblical idea of the lower magistrate, standing between the people and tyrants, was the only proper way to resist without incurring the wrath of God on a rebellion. Someone elected by the people under law submitted to lawful order, resisting unlawful tyranny. The theory was initially formed and brought forth in the British Isles. And it was done so and found its greatest expression in the code of law known by the Liber ex lege Moysi under King Alfred, who expanded the book compiled by St. Patrick. The amazing law code here by 890 AD, founded on the Ten Commandments of the Old Testament and the Beatitudes of the New, became known as the common law. This common law meant both ruler and people were under the same law. No privileges for those in government. A government of law and not of men. King Alfred was elected, the first monarch in English history elected, and the only one called great. He was not appointed. The bottom-up, decentralized government had within it, patterned after the government layers identified in Exodus 18, the lower magistrate principle on appeal as well as resistance. The hundreds, which became the counties in America, in both England and the colonies, had the result and role of resisting tyranny, protecting the people within their districts of at least 100 households or families. That was the origin of the county in the United States, to resist unfunded mandates and incurring wrath from above and protection of the people. When the colonies found themselves in need of resisting the tyranny of King George, the pastors set the pulpits ablaze, warning them that rebellion against God would cause God to be our adversary. They preached liberty and liberty under law. They also preached interposition, resisting from the lower magistrate principle. The reason the colonists formed the Continental Congress was so that they could resist Parliament righteously by means of the lower magistrate. From Calvin's Institutes to Brutus Vindicae contra Tyrannus to Pastor Samuel Rutherford's Lex Rex, all stated that there was a proper way to resist tyranny and to be a blessing of God even if you had to take up arms. During the constitutional debate period, 1765 to 1775, the colonies issued these documents of interposition. They issued them from their duly elected lower magistrates to interpose between the people who are the victims of tyranny and the tyrants in England. Lawful appeals, boycotts, interposition mingled with the prayers of the citizen, and when representatives alike appealed to the highest court of heaven, dotted the landscape of our history. The examples of Magna Carta, 800 years old this year, and Oliver Cromwell, whose interpositions against King John and King Charles were drawn upon in order to justify this resistance. That's why the Declaration of Independence was written in the first place. It was a document of interposition, written by the lower magistrate, the Continental Congress. This is also why the doctrine of interposition was written inside the Constitution itself, in order for every branch of power to have recourse and check the abuse of power by the other. And that's why the framers even envisioned, though they could hardly imagine, a day when all three branches might be so corrupt and not check one another at all to the oath of the Constitution. Imagine that. The states would be the next line of defense should the Constitution become irrelevant. But what if state governors and legislators became intimidated by federal power and it accumulated over so many years? For states had the responsibility to refuse unfunded mandates, to repeal unconstitutional laws, and to make resolutions making them known to everyone. What would happen? The last interposition step brought forth by the framers and in the scriptures themselves were the people. As James Wilson, one of 6 who signed both the Declaration and Constitution, said, in a free country, every citizen forms a part of the sovereign power. The Declaration made it clear that God granted rights to individuals and not groups. Thomas Jefferson said, I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. If we don't think them enlightened enough, the answer is not to remove the power from them, but to enlighten them by discretion and education. We've been taught today by implication that the individual citizen is powerless. We have no remedy. We must placidly, sublimely accept that since there is so much corruption in government, we should give up hope, pay more taxes, let the same government that produced the problem try to solve it, and better yet, maybe just wait till we're martyred and go to heaven. But the tension between people and government has always existed. Jefferson succinctly put it that it is time for the people to rise up, and the time to people to rise up lawfully who know their rights and to know what they ought to do. In 1958, the Supreme Court said in Cooper v. Aaron, clearly attempting to end all discussion of interposition, said that the federal judiciary is now supreme in the exposition of the law from the Constitution. Wow, that should end it, right? Hardly. So what do we do now? Since the Supreme Court has declared itself supreme over both the federal and state governments, maybe there's nothing we can do? Hardly not. You've come to the right place here to renew your understanding, improve your education, inspire your spirit, and direct your lawful action. You're about to hear an explanation of lawful rights, of interposition in resisting unjust rulers who ignore the Constitution, from one of the greatest ambassadors and orators in America. Not only that, best yet, the explanation is right in the text of the Constitution itself. Let us rise up as individuals, utilize the power of the common law jury, and nullify unconstitutional laws. Let's rise up as members of our towns and counties, building relationships with our sheriffs, county clerks, local police forces, so that we stand lawfully for the rule of constitutional interposition, submitted to God and to laws, so we resist submissively under order and not lawlessly. Let us pray that we can inspire states and state legislatures to interpose between the people and the national government, taking their rightful place of sovereignty. And ultimately, let us appeal to the highest court of all, the God of the Bible, from whom the doctrine of interposition came in the first place, and let us once again pledge to him our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. God bless you.
Croc TV.